Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
The Steve Baxi.
The Steve Baxi. Not to be confused with Steve Baxi, that fucking amateur that has been filling in for Steve the last couple years.
Yeah, I'm the Legacy sequel reboot, you know? I'm like the original, but I got a the in front of me.
This one ignores the entire Geekvolution subplot.
It's a complete reboot from the ground up. We ignore everything except the original Geeky Gentleman version.
Oh my. Anyway, so tonight we're here to start off. I fucked it up right away.
You fucked it up immediately.
That's fine. We're here to do Ghouly Gentlemen, actually. This is the beginning of horror month here on the show, where we review a bunch of horror movies, and I picked this week, and we were talking about The Last Voyage of the Demeter. We're being relatively timely, because this movie just recently came out. I was actually a little, got a little bit of whiplash with this movie, because I heard about it, it was out in theaters and gone. It feels like all within a week of each other.
It bombed so hard.
I mean, okay, so here's my thing.
Yeah.
Does it actually cost that much to keep a movie in theaters for longer, even if it's just not performing well?
Well, it's not...
Like, what do you lose?
So it's not a matter of it costing more to keep it out longer, because the studio will send out film prints to the theaters who want to keep it, and that's the initial cost. So that's why, like, the wide release is the first week, and you get, like, anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 theaters. After that, depending on the chain, there isn't, like, any sort of, like, limited contractual run for, like, most movies, unless they're, like, big blockbusters. So whenever the screen gets filled up by something better that's making money, the theater can just pull it. So this movie comes out, it's got a $45 million budget, it gets terrible reviews, it makes no money whatsoever. I don't even think it opened number one the weekend it came out, and then immediately after that, every theater pulls it.
I mean, that's ridiculous to me. I feel like, back in the day, movies used to be in theaters for like a month minimum, and this was in theaters for like a week, I swear. No one fucking fact check me, because I'm probably wrong, but I didn't even get a chance to go see it. Like, to even think about going to see it, unless I went opening night.
It had a really bad release window. Like, it came out the week before this, was the new TMNT movie, and The Meg, which was already like your big water summer movie blockbuster at the end of the summer movie season. And then the week of, you had Blue Beetle. And then the week after, you had Gran Turismo. So, like, it was sandwiched in between the tail end of all of the summer blockbuster releases, and it just doesn't have the name recognition as any one of those things. So, like, as much as, like, the concept alone should sell it to you to people, when you say Gran Turismo, you say Blue Beetle, and you say TMNT, and then you have a Jason Statham action movie, like, any one of these, even though they all did badly relative, except for TMNT, but even any one of these is going to pull more people than The Last Voyage of the Demeter on title alone.
I mean, I do think that it probably wasn't the best idea to release its summer movie season.
Agreed.
They should have waited till, like, now.
Agreed.
Spooky season. that being said, I don't really understand the reviews being really bad for it, because it's not like a great film or anything, don't get me wrong. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't really understand why did critics slam it so hard.
It's average. I thought it was fine. I was disappointed with it because I thought the idea was really sound, and I love the idea of doing, like, not sexy Dracula, but, like, creature feature Dracula, you know, where he's more monstrous and stuff. So, like, I was really excited for it, and I was disappointed that it wasn't better, but it wasn't bad. A lot of the reviews, I think, by that point got fatigued with how many crappy summer movies were coming out by that point. Like I just mentioned those four, but there were so many other movies that had come out by that point, and we were still, even into August, we were still like hardcore into the Barbenheimer mood, where Barbie and Oppenheimer were still the number one movies for like 8 to 10 consecutive weeks after they came out, essentially. So like, I think that was part of it, where like you'd go to a bunch of crappy movies that no one wants to see. You see this, and it's just kind of average, and so you just don't care about it. And meanwhile, everyone else is wanting to watch the two best movies that came out in the summer, which were Barbie and Oppenheimer. So it's unfortunate. A lot of it, I think, is just timing. Like, if you get someone to just watch it in a vacuum, they'd probably have a better time with it. But I understand why it got negative reviews. Like, I don't think it's a particularly great movie by any stretch, and I've got a lot of problems with it. But it's fine. Like, it's a very average, passable... It's generous to call it a thriller, but thriller.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd use the term thriller. It's just, you know, more or less a horror movie. I guess the thing for me is I was really excited about the premise because this is the part of Dracula that, like, everything skips. I remember it was a while back, but Alfie and I reviewed the BBC Dracula series that Moffat and Gatiss did.
Yeah.
And we both were like, it's just so hyped that they did the boat! No one does the boat! And, like, obviously that was a very, like, inspired by kind of adaptation, more than a direct one. This one's certainly more direct, but then kind of goes off and does its own thing. And I think where it fails for me is in going off and doing too much of its own thing.
Agreed.
I think the idea of having a survivor past this, even if the ending is pretty fucking ominous of, like, Dracula being like, no, now I can kill you whenever I want. I think that's probably the biggest downside. And honestly, it's gonna be one of those things where I think is a bit of a fatal flaw that honestly surprised me that it was there. Because the movie does something earlier that made me think they had a bit more balls. I guess, if I'm just being real frank. So one of the things in horror that's reasonably taboo, it's not that we never do it, but we're much more hesitant in horror movies to ever do this. And that is to kill a child on screen. You know, sometimes you'll have the cutaway and the implication. Sometimes we'll have they almost, but not quite, and the kid survives in the end. Those kind of situations. But to just have your killer, your monster, whatever, not only succeed in killing a child, but do it on screen.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're like a teenager, or they're like an older teen. No, this is a child. This kid is maybe, what, 12?
Yeah, like
if
10
that.
or 12, yeah.
Yeah. So to go that extra step, I was like, holy shit, I did not expect it. And then they, like, really doubled down on that and fucking twisted the knife with having the kid turn into a vampire and literally burn and be thrown overboard and yada yada. I honestly did not think that after doing that, I was sure, okay, they're gonna keep true to the book. No one is getting off this fucking boat. And that's, like, just a really good and ballsy take. And then it was No lie, that's going to be the biggest flaw for this movie is the fact that they don't commit to that and they do let someone survive.
Yeah, I mean, to start with the ending, I think the ending is easily the worst part, and it's a really good capsule of everything that's wrong with the movie. Is I just don't think, pun intended, I don't think it has any teeth by the end of it. It's one of those things where I'm not the biggest fan, and we've talked about this. I'm not the biggest fan of the Dracula novel, but I think it starts really, really strong, and I do like this chapter a lot. I think when you get to this part in the book, the entire tone of the piece just kind of shifts, and it finally starts to feel like actively kind of a scary book. And one of the things in the book is that the way the newspapers are recounting what happened on the boat is it's split into two sections. You've got one report on one day, and you've got one report that follows up, and they talk about how like the captain is tied to the mast, almost like he's crucified, and the whole boat is abandoned and everyone's dead, and they just crash land on this ominous storm. And they do the thing in the movie where he's tied to the helm, and then they just
But then they
untie
cut him
him,
down.
and they don't let that stick. I really don't like the final scene. I really hate the whole he survives in the bar, and then Dracula is there. Although Dracula looks sick as fuck in that outfit. But I really don't like that ending because it just sort of feels like, oh, okay, so I guess he's just assembling the Victorian Avengers now, huh? That's what that felt like. It felt like that really fucking stupid Marvel style teaser that every movie has to do. Like when the Kingsman did like a post credit scene for Adolf Hitler at the end of World War One. You know, it's just so it just feels so cheesy, and it feels like it completely ruins any of the dread that the movie had, and it's a terrible note to end the movie on. But the stuff in the middle, there's this like sweet spot in the middle where they're well into their voyage. Dracula has woken up and he starts murdering people. That one deckhand becomes a vampire and catches on fire. The kid is like locking himself in the room and Dracula's coming after him. And then they see Dracula's like form through the crack in the door and he kills the kid. Like all of that stuff in the middle, I just felt like that's the movie. That's the pitch. The pitch is Dracula on boat, people die. And it didn't feel like there was enough of that to hold my interest. I feel like it just feels too padded before and after that, and it doesn't maintain that dread. I don't agree with the criticism some people have said, which is the chapter is just too short to stretch into a movie. I think that's bullshit. It's a locked room murder mystery. That's all it is. At its heart, it's a 90-minute survival thriller where everyone's on one location. That is so easy to turn into a movie, but then you add the twist, oh, and the killer is fucking Dracula, and it's easy. Easy as fuck. I could write that movie for you right now. And I just feel like they don't commit to it. I feel like they just kind of cheese it out.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm as harsh on it as you are. I didn't mind the stuff in the beginning. I think the introduction of basically the OC in the ship's doctor is an interesting choice, and if not for the fact that he survives, I honestly wouldn't hate it. Because it puts Dracula up against something that will ultimately become his downfall. And I think it's a cool idea to let Dracula, like, get a win before the loss, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's just a cool concept of, okay, so this is Dracula, and here is the learned man, which ultimately in Van Helsing will be the thing that kills him. So to have Dracula start going up against the learned man who begins to form these plans and fights the monster of superstition with scientific rationale, and in a certain sense, it almost works. They almost get away with it. And then that's what would make the movie, I think, like undeniably great, is if they just committed to almost. But the fact that Dracula and our OC survive and get to do battle in the streets of London or what the fuck ever just doesn't hit the same at that point. You're right, it very much robs the movie of a lot of what makes it work. So the stuff in the beginning I really don't mind. Even the guy just being out on on the fucking mast and drowning in the ocean within sight of England would have been fine. Letting him have that solace, I would have been fine with. Can I tell you what I wanted to happen, though, Steve? What I was kind of hoping would continue to happen throughout the movie? I really wanted for as monstrous and creepy and terrifying as this Dracula is, I really wanted it to come down to it's just the dude and Dracula, and he thinks he's killed him, and the dude's like rowing to shore on a fucking lifeboat, and then Dracula just lands on it the same way he did with the other guy in the movie. And then instead of being monstrous, instead of being like creepy and demonic, that's when the gentleman, the Lord, comes back out. And they just talk for a little bit before Dracula kills him on the boat and then goes to shore on his own. I kept thinking that's what was gonna happen, especially when we got the scene with the fucking rowboat earlier. I was so certain that's what was gonna happen.
For a second,
and it would have been so sick.
For a second there, I thought your pitch was going to be everyone dies, and then it just comes down to Dracula and the kid.
Oh, no. No, I'm actually still really, really happy with the decision to murder the child.
Yeah, I love that a lot too.
It's just so hard to do that on film and have it be good and not just completely turn people off, because it's not like you can just film a killer doing that or whatever, a monster doing that, and then that's enough, and it's like, automatically good horror, because then it's a very thin line where it can become gratuitous and tasteless really, really quickly. So you gotta do it just right, otherwise it just feels gross, you know?
I think what helped with that too is I don't think the acting in this movie is particularly great, but I really like Liam Cunningham as the ship captain, the guy who plays Davos on Game of Thrones.
Yep.
I really liked him in the movie, and I thought he really sold the irony of this being his last voyage and promoting weird guy from the Dark Knight to be the captain, and like having this relationship with his grandson who was just like chilling on the boat with him and learning stuff. And I thought when you got to the point where the kid died, he really sold that reaction. And I think that's part of why it works, is that's the emotional anchor of the whole movie for me. And I like the idea of the Doctor being on the ship as the foreshadowing of Dracula versus science on the boat and he wins, versus Dracula and science in London later where he loses. But I kind of wish the captain just ended up being the main character, because I thought all the drama was there.
Yeah, that would have been nice, but what did you think of the character of Anna, the like tribute, as it were?
I didn't really like her either. She's fine, but I don't want to rewrite the movie. I'm trying really hard not to rewrite the movie. My problem with her is she kind of just feels like exposition. And based on what the concept itself is, the people on the boat are the thing getting him through to London. They even say that in dialogue. I just kind of don't understand why she's there except to explain to people what Dracula is. And I really don't think you needed that. I don't love the farewell at the end where she like voluntarily burns up so she doesn't have to become a vampire or anything. I don't love her. I don't think she's acting very well, and it doesn't help that she has to play against the Doctor the whole movie, and I just don't think the Doctor actor is very good either. So I didn't love that. I thought that just kind of felt like lazy screenwriting contrivances to get us where we need to be when the concept itself was already ripe enough.
Yeah. I liked the idea of setting her up as like the stowaway, and like this is Dracula's food that he's starting with to survive the first half of the journey. Because it's such a weird thing when you think about it. The fact that like Dracula does not require feeding like every 24 hours or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But yet he just fucking can't help himself as to eat everybody on this fucking boat. It's just the funniest shit to me. So it's kind of like neat that you've got this seed of like, oh well, he was planning to just feed on her, but then the cargo shifted and she was discovered. So now he's gotta feed on other people too. I really liked that. That was such like a cool conceit to get that going, and not make it feel like Dracula's just a moron. The thing that I guess surprised me, like plot hole wise, about this movie though was it's kind of weird that they don't decide to open up the crates earlier or just throw them out right away once there's a stowaway. You know?
There's some really weird choices with that in the movie where I feel like there's a couple of opportunities. There's that, and then there's like they get the guns and are starting to dig through the crates to figure out which one is Dracula, and then they cut and they don't do anything about it until later when they can tell the other guy what their plan is first. Where I both of those moments where I'm like, okay, I don't understand your reasoning here of why don't you just like kill him while he's sleeping, or get rid of the crates, or like you've gone so far now. I don't understand why anyone's waiting to die anymore.
Yeah, especially because like they find the crates in daylight.
Yeah, exactly. It's so weird. And then they don't do anything about it.
Yeah, they just wait for nighttime again, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. Feels like you guys just have a lot of missed opportunities here. And it's one of those things where, like, it's kind of unfair sometimes to watch vampire movies because, like, everyone knows the rules for a vampire when you're watching the movie, but,
Yeah.
like, all these situations are like, nah, vampires aren't real, or these people have never heard of these legends or have had to deal with them in any respect. And I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, it's not like the filmmakers don't know that the audience is going into this with certain expectations. So, while you certainly don't need to completely hold your audience's hand, it's not exactly the worst idea to, address those concerns within the context of the film itself. Because otherwise your characters just come off as kind of dumb.
Especially because you're in a context where I don't think you can just write off Dracula as superstition, given the number of people that think something demonic is afoot, Like, as a conflict, it's a lot more interesting if the doctor's the only one that doesn't believe it and everyone else is quick to accept it. Turning back just a little bit, the part of the reason the cut with the guns and discovering the crates bothered me so much is you have the scene where like him and Anna take some guns and they go down to the storeroom and they're like one by one opening the crates and they're trying to figure out which ones is Dracula. And the way that scene is directed, it's very clearly supposed to be tense. It's supposed to be like Dracula's hiding in any corner and he could jump them. But the plan essentially is to just like murder him while he's sleeping in the daylight. And then they find his crate, and then they don't do anything, and then they leave to go get the other guy, who's the first mate or whatever, who's about to become captain, to convince him of what to do. And then the guy doesn't want to listen, so the doctor goes on a speech about racism, and then they decide to go do the plan. And I just felt like the entire priority in that moment shifted. And I don't understand why they didn't just murder Dracula there. And I also feel like the need to insert that metaphor of the past versus progress, of using him as a doctor, but also as a black person who can't get work where he is, and that's why he's going to London to find somewhere more enlightened. I thought mixing all of those metaphors there, the necessity for that would have paid off more if any of it was done in a way that wasn't just kind of shallow, and also if it was done in a way where it didn't feel like you had to stop the movie in its tracks to explain it to the audience, because that scene happening after they discover the body just makes it seem like, wait, your priorities are skewed here. Kill the vampire and then worry about racism. It's just a weird choice, and it's not bad on its face, but it definitely needed to be like restructured or something.
Yeah, And it's also just like such a weird thing of like, okay, well, he's not sleeping in there. Well, not to put too fine a point on it, but that's against the rules of Dracula within not just the context of the book, but the context on which your story is dependent. Because like the whole thing is Dracula in the book and in this movie needs to rest in his home soil. That is, there's no debating that one way or the other. The movie certainly didn't have to adapt that, but they chose to keep the bit with like these crates of earth and soil, which means you're keeping that mythology that he has to rest there. So opening the crate and he's not fucking in there, you're breaking your own rules. You know, like that's you've written yourself into your own corner here. Why isn't he in there and it's daytime on the boat? Are we going with the rule of like he doesn't have to sleep during the day, he just can't touch sunlight? Are we going with that? Because that feels like a missed opportunity to have a more tense scene where they could like almost corner him in the sun or something, you know?
Well, and especially like when you invent a character to be nothing but exposition, these are the kinds of expository things that you would hope she says. Like, what exactly are the rules? Are you using these rules and not these other rules? Can we expect this and not this other thing? It felt like it was trying to have its cake and eat it too, a little bit too much, where it's like, the rules you recognize that vampires have to follow are here, and we're not going to spell them out for you. Except in these instances where we choose not to follow them, even though you've assumed them to exist.
Yeah.
It's a little sloppy.
Mm-hmm. So again, this is that thing of like, it's not a bad movie.
No.
But it's also just not as good a movie as it could have been. And yet, here we are again, all these years later after reviewing Bram Stoker's Dracula. And my complaint remains the same, Steve. If we're going to choose to adapt something and be, like, in the marketing and in everything about the film, talk about how it is reverential and it is intending to be an adaptation not of Dracula, but of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Why the fuck are we changing shit? Like...
Or at the very least, right? If you're going to decide to change it, then at least make it go really fucking hard like Francis Ford Coppola does with that movie. This is not that. This could have gone really, really hard, but like, you're deciding to adapt a chapter of the book that's really good for this kind of material, and maybe you don't want to stick to it word for word because, you know, it's only like 20 pages or so. There's only so much you could do there. So okay, fine. That's completely normal. But then you decide to adapt it in a way where like the bite of the whole thing just disappears by the end, and at that point I don't understand why you decided to adapt it. Like it almost just sort of feels like the thing about the chapter that everyone appreciated and liked is the thing that this movie is actively trying to avoid, which is it's scary and it's fatalistic and it's ominous because no one survives. And none of those are what this movie is for more than like 20 minutes at a time.
Yeah. Because like when
I don't
it's
hate the movie or anything. I just think it's kind of average.
Yeah, when it's fucking scary, it is really scary.
Yeah.
Dude, the fucking guy trying to break into the office, and then you just see Dracula slunched over in the fucking corner, and he just stands up. Holy shit, that's
so good.
Great.
The bit early on with Dracula having just gotten started feeding, and the one guy is out on the deck on his own, and he's like looking at the corner, and Dracula pounces him like a fucking wild dog and slashes his throat. So good.
It's okay. The way that like every time you see Dracula feed, he gets visibly stronger and transforms subtly. I'm not sure if they did like CG work or like change the prosthetics or what, but like or if it's just like that Christopher Reeve Clark Kent to Superman style transformation where it's just in the way that the actor starts carrying himself, is so fucking good. Because like that first kill, right, where he's like slashed the guy's throat, it's like his hand is on his mouth and it keeps cutting to like different things and it keeps cutting back to his hand on his mouth, and you just like the hand's getting bigger or some shit. Like I swear it feels like the hand is getting like more formed and more monstrous and stops being like as gaunt and spindly and like skeletal and starts to actually look like huge, you know? That's at least that's the feeling I had watching it. It just actually felt like this hand was actually changing. I don't have like screenshots to go back and forth.
How did you like the actual Dracula design?
It's very Nosferatu without being like so close to it that it's just, you know, obvious, if that makes sense. It's a really good monster Dracula. When he's got the fucking wings is the best. Because they do like the thing that I think I've only ever seen it in Jeepers Creepers 2 was the only other time I saw this, where like the wings actually have that like skin shower curtain kind of look to him. Like when he had the girl, like when he was trying to grab her and take her away and stuff, and he had her like wrapped in his wings, and you could like see her hands and her face trying to fight through it. That was so fucking good.
Yeah, I really like the skin wings with the tattered pieces on them. I thought that was really cool. Making him look more like a bat creature is a nice touch. I really like some of the behind the scenes stuff with the creature suit, because there is a full prosthetic that the actor wore for this that took like 3 or 4 hours to put on. I think it does get hurt in some places because there are very like clear moments where you can tell that this one shot they have the full prosthetic on and it looks amazing, and then in this other shot they just like scanned the models and CGI'd over it. And it's never like bad CGI, but like towards the end it becomes kind of telling, like when he's choking out the guy on the boat, and you see him like just full on with lighting. It just doesn't look quite as good as it did when he was in the shadows. But I like the design. I like, again, that we just do like a straight up creature feature Dracula where he's a monster. He rips your throat out and starts sucking your blood. He's got giant wings and claws and pointy ears and like disheveled skin and stuff. As much as like the vampire sex metaphor is interesting and worth talking about and has a lot of good history behind it, everything gets old after a while, and I am kind of sick of just like sexy vampires. It's nice just to see one that's a straight up monster.
See, I prefer when he can do both. When he's got like that ability to transform between these two, like this is his true form, and then there's like the guise of a man kind of thing.
Sure, yeah.
So like it's funny, we're talking about the design, right? Thinking on it, I think this might be my second favorite Dracula design. Because you know what the first is, right?
What's the first?
I want to hear you guess and see. This is a test of how well you know me, of how good a friend you are.
Is it a live action Dracula, or is it like an animated Dracula?
It is a live action Dracula.
Is it Dead and Loving?
Dead and Loving It? No. That's just fucking Leslie Nielsen in a cape.
Alright, fair enough. Is it... It's another good live action Dracula.
It's the best one. Like, there's no competition.
I don't know. Which one?
Van Helsing Dracula.
Oh, fuck you! That's not a good one!
What the fuck are you talking about? Van Helsing's
sucks.
Dracula is so good. You suck. You suck and you're a bad friend.
Oh my god. We need to review Van Helsing at some point. God damn.
Dude, First of all, he's got like the sexy like human thing, and you called him a Power Ranger villain. I don't know how many times. But then when he and fucking Van Helsing fight, and Van Helsing's a werewolf, and Dracula's like he's like got this bat monster aesthetic at the same time, but he's also like I just like that he looks like fucking strong and buff as shit when he's fighting Van Helsing. It's like that perfect blend of like the DBZ kind of like muscles on muscles shit with the monstrosity. I fucking love it, and this is like this gets it too, but it's like he's just very spindly in this, and it's not that I don't like that, and I don't think it's like cool, but it's just not as like oh shit. Because I like it. I like when the things like, oh, it looks terrifying and it can kick your ass.
That's hilarious. You know, though, it's a cool contrast, though, right? Because you've got the one Dracula in Van Helsing that's like big and buff and jacked, and then you've got this one who looks kind of like a small gust would fall him over because he's so thin and scrawny.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also part of why it works. Is like he is creepy. He looks like he should be dying. And then he just jumps you and fucking murders you, and it's kind of hype to see some of that happen. Literally, the whole like middle chunk of the movie, from Dracula coming out of the crypt and starting to murder people, up through basically the kid dying, is like solid. And I wish that was just the whole movie.
Yeah, I'd agree. Again, I think if they had just gotten like close, if they'd been fighting him off and everything, and then they almost did it, but then they just failed in the end, it would have been a really, really fucking great movie.
I also sort of feel like with the Moffat one too, because when I wrote about it on Patreon, I compared it to the Moffat thing too, just because that's the only other like big adaptation that does this specific chapter. The thing about the Moffat one that really worked is like Dracula pretended like he was just one of the normal people and just hung out with the crew and shit, and it was fun watching the kind of mind games happening, and it helps like stretch out the events on the boat a little bit more when there is kind of like a murder mystery guessing game happening. And in this movie there's definitely like a good segment of it where no one really knows what's going on, but I feel like they kind of missed the mark on making us feel like the characters are becoming paranoid because they don't let that go for a little longer. And again, I think that's part of what made the chapter in the book work so well, is as you're reading through the notes of the captain's journal, you just kind of hear him go like slowly, like everything's fine, something weird happened again, something weirder happened, weird things are happening. There's so much fucking weird shit happening. Like, it just builds and builds and builds. And I don't think the movie takes advantage of the idea that it needs to be a little bit more of a psychological thriller to make the premise work. Because that's the whole thing, is that you're out at sea, no one's going to help you, something is on board, and if you don't stop it, it will kill everyone. I just don't feel like it cashes out the potential of that.
Yeah, having stuff like linger in denial for a little bit longer probably would have helped.
Yeah.
I think the other avenue that maybe ends a little too quickly was the captain's madness.
Yeah, 100%.
Like they have the thing where it's like, no, I saw him move, he's alive, and it's a fucking vampire and shit. Like, that's such a good scene. And then there's the next scene with him where he's like convinced that if he serves Dracula, then he'll be able to bring the boy back again. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that should have just been a longer part of the... You know what? Again, you don't want to rewrite the movie, but fuck it, I'm going to do it. You know what would have been really good is if you didn't have him come back from that. If you kept this fatalism, if you didn't have him come back from that, and the crew, in order to further their plan to try to drown Dracula, were the ones that tied him to the fucking mast. Or tied him to the fucking, what's the thing called? Not the wheel. It's got a specific name in boating.
The boat steering wheel.
Yeah, the boat steering wheel.
The boat's controller.
Yeah, the boat's Bluetooth.
The boat's joystick. The boat's NES controller.
The boat's cell phone.
The boat's keyboard. Okay, I'm sorry, your point.
The boat's PDA. I'm old enough to remember when PDA did not mean public displays of affection.
Too true.
Yeah. No, but anyway, if the crew had to do that, again, it is rewriting the movie at that point, but it's just so much more fucked at that point. And again, I think if the movie just had the balls to be as fucked as it was when it killed the child throughout the entirety of the runtime, or just keep getting you reach that bridge of they've just shown Dracula murder a child. It can't possibly get any worse.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, it doesn't. The scene of the kid turning into a vampire isn't nearly as long or drawn out as the other guys. And then just after that, the movie still has some good bits. When the fucking dude, I always do really appreciate it in a horror movie where you establish the logical outs cannot happen. Because that's what you always think of in context when you're watching this is why don't they just fucking get on the lifeboats and go? And you see someone do it, and it doesn't work. And that is my shit right there. I love that in a horror movie. And it's played so well here. Just Dracula landing on the fucking boat in the fog. Oh, and that was the first reveal you get of the wings, too. It's so good.
Yeah, no, the fact that he can do that is really fucking cool. And seeing him on the lifeboat and then murdering him and then later coming back to the boat, and you've got those two guys standing up top waiting for Dracula so they can shoot him, and he just starts flying through he's a fucking airplane ready to land and murder them. Really, really good shit.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Sent you images of Van Helsing's Dracula, by the way.
Oh no, I remember this Dracula. I don't doubt your memory.
It's so fucking cool. What's wrong with you?
Fucking Zordon ass Power Rangers villain.
You're a Power Rangers villain.
Why thank you. I aspire to be a Power Rangers villain.
Then why do you say every time you talk about it, you just it's like you've called him a slur. And I'm just sitting here but you say it like it's you say it like a slur, but then you insist, no, it's a good thing. It's good that he's a Power Rangers villain. I'm like, Steve,
I'm tired
why
of
don't
all
you
of
like
these woke commenters telling me that I can't call people Power Rangers villains just because it's a slur.
Steve, hold on. I need your help.
Okay.
Is there a Power Rangers villain that's name begins with the letter N?
Probably. I'd have to think. I don't know off the top of my head, but there probably is. You know how many creatures of the week there are from 20 series of Power Rangers? I'm sure there's one that starts with N.
I was hoping for a bigger one, but like a named villain that shows up multiple times or something.
I'm sure I have one somewhere. Let me look.
Okay, this is important information.
This is important information.
He needs to do this so I can make my joke.
I'm just trying to see if I can find an alphabetical list or something, and just find someone with a letter N. Damn. I went through 4 seasons and there's no ends.
Oh no.
No ends
well,
yet.
My joke was we've gone way past the point of my joke, which was going to be Steve's going to say the N-word and then drop a Power Rangers villain name.
Nadira. Nadira's one. There we go.
Okay, Steve's gonna say the N-word.
Nadira.
Oh man, I might have to bleep that.
I can't believe I forgot that one. That's the daughter of the main villain in Time Force, and her whole thing is that she has pink hair and is attractive.
Well, there you go. Is this where it started? Was
Maybe.
she the first one you thought you could fix?
Maybe. I don't know. It could be. What year did that come out? I probably saw it as a child. Yeah, I mean, okay, so back to this. I don't mean to like rag on this movie like it's the worst thing ever, because it's not. It's average. It's fine. I think part of the problem is just because it's so middle of the road. It really, really hurts the experience when you can watch it and start feeling like there were choices you immediately would have done to make it better, like we're doing. Like when the experience of the movie is I want to rewrite the movie, then maybe it's a failing on the movie's part to some level where it can't keep you engaged with how it set itself up. Especially in a story where I feel like you have so many opportunities to like really go to fucked up territory and you actively pull away from it to the point where it's almost like you're calling attention to the fact that you're pulling away from the darker stuff, and it just kind of hurts the whole thing. And again, in context, I just feel like there were so many average movies that came out this year, and there were so many average movies that came out the week of, the week before, and the week after this, that it's hard to like even hold it in your mind very much. Like as of this recording, I have seen 63 movies that have come out this year, and Last Voyage of the Demeter is ranked number 37, and everything,
So
literally
right in the middle of the pack.
but like everything from number 52 up through number 27 is average, like in this territory. So like that's a lot of fucking movies that are just fine.
I mean, but in all fairness, isn't average like what most of the movies have to be by definition?
No, absolutely. But
Like, you can't have a year where everything is great and everything is shit, right? Like, you have to have movies that are average, so I wouldn't hold it against this for just being in the pack like that.
No, I'm not holding it against it for being average. I'm just saying that, like, because it's average, it's hard to, like, think of anything about it that makes it stand out aside from the things that are problems. Like, when you're in that space of average, you can have an average movie that's fine and fun to watch, but when you have so many of them like this back to back, it's not like I'm trying to say it's a bad movie by any stretch, but the only things I can think to talk about it are the things that don't work.
I think that's fair. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. This might just end up being a shorter video then, because I'm not really sure what else I have to talk about with this one.
Were you excited for this before it was coming out? Because I feel like you, me, and Alfie were like all gung-ho for this movie because it just sounded like such a cool idea.
Yeah, I was really excited for the premise. I knew I probably wouldn't get the chance to go see it in theaters, but I was excited to see it regardless. And I even did consider, like, purchasing this, but you want to know some like weird shit? So this movie like came and went from theaters in late August, right? Like,
yeah,
blinked and you miss it, right? I went to Barnes & Noble to see if I could find a physical copy, and when they didn't have one there, I got out my phone to see what it was on streaming, which was $20, and I was like, when the fuck's a physical copy dropping of this? And it's not coming out until, like, late December? So
yeah.
it released in theaters too early for the spooky season, and it's not on DVD or Blu-ray until well after the spooky season. Feels like they just really shot themselves in the foot for this movie ever making a buck. You know?
100%. 100%. Like, and not to put too fine a point on it, right? There are other plenty of good average movies out there where if you just timed it right, then it would lean more towards the positive side than the negative. Like, for example, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. Not a good movie. Not a very good movie at all. But it is average. It's fine. It's an inoffensive, fine little ride. And because I saw it in a context where there was nothing else happening and it was just allowed to kind of be on its own for a couple of weeks, I had a lot of fun with it. Imagine you releasing this movie like now, October 3rd, after like nothing else has come out to compete with it. Because the only competition it has in October is the new Exorcist movie and the Five Nights at Freddy movie. Like, that's a plenty of time to just like cash in on, and here's Dracula on a boat movie. They really could have done more by this movie just in terms of like releasing it in a better area. Fuck, even like late September would have been a better idea than mid-August.
Yeah, and again, the thing that's just flooring me is like, okay, so they fucked up there. Why are they waiting so long to release it on physical?
Yeah.
Or like not even just the physical copy release, right? But like on a streaming that someone will actually pay for. Because no one is paying $20 to stream a movie. No one is that stupid.
Well, it also just sort of speaks to like the problem with a lot of these movie rentals and stuff is like when they leave theaters, they're going to be in a $20 rental for a really long time before they move down to $5. And for a long time, the argument was like Netflix is cheaper than going to the movie theater. But I could have seen this movie twice for less than $20.
Right? If it had only been in theaters.
Yeah.
It's
like,
just
really?
got no chance to make a buck.
No. Like, it bombed, but you're right. Part of the reason it bombed is because it just didn't stay in theaters long enough for anyone to see it.
It's crazy. This was just terribly timed.
It was. It was.
Because, like, you just get into a vibe, right? Like, you watch one horror movie in spooky season, you start seeing, like, the Halloween decorations everywhere. You want to watch another. Yeah. It's just that, like, the zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
Watching a horror movie, watching, like, spooky movies at the end of August, it's just not quite the same.
And, I mean, not to spoil anyone's fun here or anything, but as a person that watches a lot of horror movies, about a good 70% of them suck ass. You just have to suck ass to be a watchable horror movie. And this one does not. It is nowhere near that bad. So, like, you really could have just dropped this in the middle of other horror binges and be totally fine with it, you know? It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It doesn't have to be, like, the greatest horror movie of all time. It could just be a passable monster movie to watch alongside stuff like Van Helsing, and you're completely content.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me ask you this, because I didn't bring this up earlier, and it is something that kind of passed my mind when this came out, and it's a bit disappointing that this wasn't successful. Because it kind of, like, hearing the premise of this really did kind of instantly get the gears turning in my mind of, like, could you do a series of Dracula movies or a Dracula show that is extended and like extended or prolonged or whatever adaptations, if not chapter by chapter, like location by location. So like I know we technically got this movie and it also bombed in August. Was Renfield.
That's really like Renfield.
Yeah, but that's like a really like clearly not going for the same kind of vibe that this is, right?
Yeah.
Like Nicolas Cage is Dracula. Okay, yeah, you're going for a completely different vibe than this. But like you could do a movie just about Renfield's time in Dracula's castle. You follow up Renfield with Harker, and it's about Jonathan Harker's time. You follow up that with The Boat One. You follow up that with Lucy and him like slowly turning her, and then Mina, and then Van Helsing. You know, like, do you think that would be like not financially, obviously, because this didn't work, but like, narratively, do you think that would be a feasible way to do an adaptation of Dracula, of just like section by section?
Yeah, I mean, well, two things about that. Number one is the fact that Universal released two completely disconnected adaptations of Dracula that to go in two completely different directions at the same time, and they shot both of them in the foot by releasing one in April and one in August, and they completely bombed. Sucks ass, and I want more Dracula movies, and now we're not going to get them because of bullshit like this. But number two, to your point, I think so. I don't think you could do chapter by chapter. I think that would just be too decompressed, especially when you have the actors burning through skip pages faster than you can read them. But location by location, or artifact of history by artifact, I think you could do it really strong, because the big thing about Dracula is like it's written by constructing news articles and journal entries and documents and letters and stuff. And so as a structural choice, that really factors into the horror of the book, because it depends so much on unreliable narrators. It depends on you connecting the pieces and aspects of communication. And the characters really come alive in terms of how different people see each other. And the only way you can like really capture that structural choice on film would be to like mess with it visually, or by breaking it up into segments where each character kind of gets their own vignette that ultimately connects and builds a bigger picture. So like if you did the Renfield stuff as its own thing, and then all of Mina's aspects of the story as one thing, and try to truncate it and build it around just Mina as the focal character running through the whole story, but we're only seeing the aspects that are relevant for her, and then do it again except it's Jonathan, and then do it again except it's Van Helsing. I think that'd be a really cool way to do it. You'd have to be really smart about how you organize these things, but it's not like we haven't done stuff like that before. Like, as not good as it is, the final season of How I Met Your Mother is kind of that too, where the entire thing is built around one day, and every character is actively participating in that day at different points, and every episode you're seeing a different side of the story that should, in theory, collectively lead all towards one satisfying conclusion. And I think if you did that with all the stuff in Dracula, you could probably get a lot more out of the story, because one of the biggest problems I have with it is that certain characters' perspectives are just not interesting to read. And so if you had a way to like force the writer and director to find ways to make this perspective feel worthwhile and sympathetic, then you could probably open up the book a little bit more too.
Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't say like chapter by chapter, but like I think location is probably the best one, because like Renfield and Harker would mainly take place in the castle, and
Yeah.
you got like everything happening in like Lucy's room and shit. Just man,
Honestly,
I don't know.
honestly, and we've done this before on film because we combine these characters so much, and maybe this is why we do it, but like if you just did the section of Dracula that's Jonathan Harker has gone insane up through Lucy is under Dracula's spell, like just that little middle bit, that's a movie on its own too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Like the Lucy one could be good because you could end it with her becoming a vampire, and they have to like kill her in the crypt and shit.
Yeah. That'd be really fucking
Man.
cool. Even just like, even if you just did like the first 30 pages and it's just Jonathan Harker going to the castle and that's the whole movie, that fucking works.
I don't know about that, but that's an interesting premise.
I think you could do a really cool, again, if you had the balls for it, like fatalistic story of Jonathan Harker visiting the castle, meeting the townsfolk who are all too scared to take him there, the travel and the weird wolves and omens and stuff. You arrive at the castle and slowly he's losing his mind over Dracula. He gets attacked by the Dracula babes and is freaked out by it. And as the story progresses, he just loses his mind and he's trapped in Dracula's castle. And you end it.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. You were saying, what you said though was just him getting to the castle was the whole movie.
No, just
like,
him going insane in the castle.
No, him going insane in the castle, yes. Maybe I misheard you. People go check the tape. I could have sworn you said just him getting to the castle. I'm
I
like,
mean,
it
yeah.
could maybe be like the opening episode of a series or something.
Yeah, maybe not just him traveling the town, just not just traversing the castle, but like getting to him going insane in the castle. I think is its own movie. I think that's some of the best stuff in the Bram Stoker Dracula too. Is just the cool imagery of the castle and the things specifically that Harker sees that would make him doubt his own sanity. So all of that would be really cool. I think Dracula's ripe for that kind of stuff because there's just so much section by section that feels like it could contain its own multitude of storytelling. And Dracula is so flexible where you could kind of use him in any way to kind of move the conflict along based on what part of the story you want to work with. Even if you don't want to like adapt it straight, you just want to be like, this section of the story where they're all courting the same woman except a vampire shows up. Like, that's a very easy thing to pitch. It's like when we were joking when we reviewed Prey of like, just pitch any movie and then end it with a predator shows up and it works.
The Matrix, but then a predator shows up.
Yeah, that would go so fucking hard. Are you kidding? That sounds awesome. Imagine if fucking Neo is leading a war against the aliens and then a predator. That's so cool.
Buy dinner with Andre, but then a predator shows up.
It works perfectly, you know? You're having a casual philosophical conversation, and then a fucking predator shows up. All the President's Men, and then a predator shows up.
12 Angry Men, and then a predator shows up.
Casablanca, and then a predator shows up.
I'm trying to think of like the bridge over the River Kwai, and then a predator shows up.
It's so easy. It's so easy. You fucking rebel without a cause, and then the predator shows up.
I'm just trying to think of the most fucking boring movies in existence.
Bridge on the River Kwai is not bad. It's a little boring in the beginning, but I like it.
Did you ever watch the Unforgivable videos when you were in like middle school or like high school or whatever?
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't remember.
It's just a black dude in the woods, and it's all shot in black and white, and he's just telling these stories, and it's very clearly like improvised. And he's got a very particular voice, and shit. But he's like, so I went over to this girl's house. And there was these bitches watching movies. And I was like, bitch, what you watching? And they was like, oh, we're just watching Hitch. I'm like, bitch, turn that fucking movie off. We're gonna watch my movies. It's like, oh okay, what do you want to watch? I want to watch Bridge Over the River Kwai.
That's incredible. I love that.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
Good shit.
Classic early to mid 2000s internet humor.
Really, just really watching an Unforgivable video and then a predator shows up.
It's fucking predator. She's already in the woods. Oh man.
Okay, all right. I honestly do not have much more. I was scraping the bottom of the barrel there.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's all good. All right, everyone. I think that will do it for this episode. Steve, do you want to pick for next time, or you want to leave it to Alfie, assuming he's able to come?
I can do a pick and see if Alfie's okay with it, and then he can have the next one, or if he's able to come, then we can pick his, assuming it works out, just so we have something ready.
Okay.
All right.
It was a yes or no question.
Yeah, I'll pick it. All right. All right. This is great. This is gonna be fun. Let's review the. Now I'm thinking if I want to give you something that's more serious, but I also want to do something really funny. Okay. Okay. Fuck it. I'm not gonna overthink it. Let's do Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, the public domain horror movie Winnie the Pooh. It is now on Peacock, and I really want to watch it.
Let's go.
It looks so good.
I'm excited. All right. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
and I am oppressing the champions of the oppressed.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.